Shalom, and welcome to the Parasha Pod. I'm Rav Mordechai Rosenberg, here with Rav Menachem Leibtag, and we are talking Torah together. Wherever you are, whatever you're doing, it's time to learn.
Parshat Lagman, Tazria-Metzora.
Tazria-Metzora. Tazria-Metzora starts us off with the laws of the woman who gives birth.
Which is special for me this week because I was a proud grandfather of a baby boy born to my daughter on Seder night.
Wow.
10 minutes after midnight.
Mazel tov. And then we get extensive detail about the person that gets the tzarat.
Contracts tzarat.
Yeah. And then we've got a little bit of detail in the end of Metzora about how the person becomes pure again, and then we have some details about the person who has various emissions from their body and the impurity that comes from that. So my question is, we're talking a lot about purity and impurity this week.
In Hebrew?
Tuma and tahara.
Okay. You call it impurity. Chumash calls it Tuma.
Right.
Okay.
So what is Tuma?
Okay.
What's tahara?
So instead of defining the word Tuma, what happens when someone becomes tamei?
Mm-hmm.
His status changes. And from a halachic point of view, as far as Chumash is concerned, if you're tamei, I won't say impure, let's use this word for now on tamei, as opposed to tahor. The default of every person, you're born tahor, but you can become tamei. Anyone who becomes tamei can become tahor again. Now, it could be you would never do that process, but by definition, every tuma is followed by a way of tahara.
Okay.
Now, when you're tamei, there's one thing you can't do. You can't go to the temple. In other words, the main law is if you're tamei, you can't enter the temple, which means it's temple related. And if you look at all these cases, I have given birth to a child, having this rare skin disease, whatever that might be. We'll call it leprosy for now, but whatever it is. But it's definitely a skin disease that a person's embarrassed about the way he looks, etc. And of course, body emissions, which are not in the normal, regular routine of life. They're all cases where God says time out. In general, if I follow the model we've been using all the time, that visiting the temple, you're coming as an employee, not as a consumer. I'm coming to remember my relationship with God, why I'm chosen, how I have to act as a Jew. On a regular basis, I need that little reminder, and I want to meet my boss, see how I'm doing, just regulate how things are going. Now, there's certain life cycles and certain times in life, we have a disruption as an employee. Sometimes employees have to take time off. Right. Like, you give birth to a child, you get what's called maternity leave. It works the same way. The same thing in your service of God. You just had a baby. Whoa, you follow? Take care of yourself. Take care of your baby. Don't come running to God in a time like this. God doesn't want to see you. You didn't anything wrong. You did the greatest thing. You give birth to a child. You're giving life. But there's so many things going on in your life now. It's so tumultuous. Time out. Don't come now. God says, I don't want to see you now. Not I don't want you. You're wanted, but time out. It's a disruption which is necessary, and the goal of the time out is later the time in. But people might want to all of a sudden, I have to go thank God right away. I got to run to God, run to the temple. God says, no, I don't want to see you. Now, take care of yourself. You and your baby are more important than coming to God. And therefore, God says, time out. Take care of yourself. Now, the same, that's going to be you'll let it.
Yeah.
Now, my proof of all these cases, they're all what's called 7-day Tuma. When they're over, they're always followed by a certain sacrifice. It's called a korban machshirin. Something gets you ready. It's always a chatat olah. Olah chatat. There's always what we call a sin offering. Chumash calls it a chatat, which is a purification offering, and olah is a burnt offering. Now, the first time we find them, we had them back in Parashat Tetzaveh, and again back in Parashat Tzav. The Kohanim, in order to become priests, chapter 29 in Shemot. Remember, to make you a Kohen, to enable you to serve God, you need to initiate. You have that initiation ceremony, and the classic korbanot that start your initiation are going to be the chatat olah. On Yom Kippur, remember, we renew. We'll talk about that when we get to Achrimot. Am Yisrael, as a nation, has to renew its job as an employee of God as a national level, and every year on Yom Kippur, we renew that relationship. We're going to sort of rededicate ourselves as a mamlechet kohanim, as a nation of priests, and therefore we bring a chatat olah. That's on Yom Kippur. The Kohanim always have to bring their chatat olah in their service. But whenever I have to get a chatat by itself, that's chapter 4 and 5 in Sefer Vayikra. When an individual did something wrong unintentionally, he has to do something, to show I'm sorry and try to learn from his mistakes. That's a standalone chatat. But whenever I have a chatat olah duo, that combination, that's always called a korban machshirin. You didn't necessarily do anything wrong, but you need time out. It's a disruption, and I need to do something symbolic to have my time back in. But I need that time out, and there's minimum time out. Now again, there's a rough question why for a boy it's 40 days and why for a girl it's 80 days. That's the question is the default 80 days, but you get 40 days earlier because you had a boy, or is the default 40 days, but because you had a girl, you have to wait another 40 days? I'm not really sure. I never heard a good answer for that. But that doesn't take away from the overall idea of that there's a need for a timeout. So
you don't really buy into this. A lot of people make an association with death and say like, death isn't welcome in the Mishkan, and all the kind of associations with Tuma is to do with death. You don't buy that?
Death is part. I would say death is part of life. Now it just so happens they all relate to life, and death is part of life. But giving birth to a child, the topic isn't death. The topic is life.
Right. Okay.
And Sarat again, there's a connection between life and death for sure. But I think if I'm looking at the temple, God doesn't want people coming, praying, coming as consumers, keep me alive. Right? God wants people coming to the temple. Remember, I'm in your service. There's sometimes you need to leave from your service of God. I need to do something symbolic when I'm back into my regular service. Right? I call it more of a timeout. Let's take leprosy, for example, or tzarat. We'll call it tzarat from now on. Whatever it is. Okay. In most societies in ancient time, you were a leper, you're out for life. That's it. They put you away somewhere. You're embarrassed to show your face. No one wants to see you. They're basically, all through ancient culture, lepers are sent away from society.
Right.
The goal of Chumash is not to banish the leper. The goal of Chumash is to re-enter him into society. But I have to recognize there's a problem. So I need to, first I have to isolate him. Maybe if it might be even contagious. After all these corona years, I think we can understand why we need 7 days of quarantine.
Right.
And why, of all things, it's forbidden to enter the temple where everyone's gathered. That would spread a disease. The corona helped me understand maybe one of these reasons why coming to the temple is not safe for the nation at a practical level. But either way, the goal of that person is to deal with this problem, but to get over it. So I need a visit from the priest. The Kohen has to come and visit, see how you're doing, talk to him, etc. He needs time out. Maybe Chumash doesn't say you contracted it because you did something wrong. The person should maybe think, what did I do to cause this?
Right.
So we have that thing about, remember what happened to Miriam, but that's in Sefer Devarim. But Vayikra doesn't say.
Sorry, can you just elaborate on that?
In Sefer Vayikra, we're told, be careful to follow the laws of Tzarat. Follow whatever the Kohanim or listen to your doctor. Don't be your own doctor, basically. Don't decide on your own. Remember what happened to Miriam, which most commentators understand. Remember what Miriam did, her haughtiness, speaking about her brother and saying bad things, etc. That caused it. Remember what happened to her, even though she meant well, etc. Kal v'chomer, even more so, we need to remember not to speak Lashon Hara. Ramban, Nachmanides says, we learn from there's a positive commandment every day to remember not to speak Lashon Hara. It's a positive, not a negative. It's not a commandment, don't speak Lashon Hara. It's a positive commandment to remember not to speak Lashon Hara. Means think about not thinking about bad things about other people.
Right.
Yeah. So that's
so that's what the mitzvah.
But that doesn't mean there's lots of people who talk Lashon Hara who don't get tzarat.
Right. And
it could be there might be a tzarat who never did anything wrong. But it's a disease and something, whatever it is. But it has to be dealt with. But the main goal is for that tzarat to mainstream and get back to a service. He can't serve God now. He's not part of society. But I'm using the Kohen, the priesthood, to help that person, to visit him, to talk to him, to see how he's doing, to isolate him, etc. Give him a process to mainstream him back into society. And when that process is over, it might take 7 days, it might take 14 days. There's cycles of 7 again. And then when that's over, he brings the chatat olah. And a special asham, assuming that maybe something was wrong, but that's for him to decide. It's not our job to say you did something wrong. It's his job to ask himself what I did wrong. It's our job to mainstream him, bring him back to society. And the same thing with the strange body emission, also seems to be something, some type of disease. In shot of them, it's not a natural emission. It's something not the natural way, and also needs time out. And it might be contagious.
Okay, I like the idea in general, but how do you fit this idea? We seem to be saying like that the tzarua, the person with leprosy, they haven't done anything wrong from our point of view. Maybe they should have a sit and think about something they might have done wrong, but from our point of view, we're not.
I shouldn't say they did something wrong.
Right. We're not trying to like shame them by sending them away.
They're there anyhow. We're trying to help them come back, but same thing. You're in contact with a dead body. Usually it's a case you're sitting shiver, you lost a loved one. So that's a rough situation. It's depressing. So a lot of people don't get over it. Take that week, deal with death, and then get over it and get back to life. So I need that time out for my regular service of God, and then I need my time in.
Right. I mean, there does seem to be some parallels with the mourning process.
First, the fact there are always 7 days, which relates to life and nature and God, and everything relating to nature is 7.
Right.
And death is part of life.
Right. And last week we also had the idea that when Aaron's family was in mourning for Nadav and Avihu, they were told they weren't allowed to let their hair.
It's a very similar laws we have by Tzara.
They couldn't let the hair grow wild, and they couldn't tear their clothes. But he has to let his hair grow wild and tear his clothes. So it's almost like he is in mourning.
Yeah.
Do you see it that way, or do you see it just like there's like a?
I need to do something. I need to do something different that I can get over with, etc. I need, like, afterwards shaving, shaving off your hair, etc. Like with the Nazir, also with people need rituals, but rituals have to have meaning.
Right.
I can't just say, "Oh, get over it," and that's it. I need that quarantine. I need the visit of the Kohen. I need to do my life routine has to be a little bit different, but the goal is to get back to your day-to-day routine. And all these laws are located between, the terrible sin of Nadav and Avihu and the tragedy of what happened, and then what God tells Aaron right afterwards. After Parashat Shmini should follow Achrimot, because after Aaron's son died, we interrupt, that sequence with other examples of who can come to the temple and how do you come to the temple. So Achrimot is, here's the right way to go to the temple. But before we have how the right way to go to the temple, here's how the wrong way to go, when you can't go to the temple.
Right.
So basically, chapter 11 through 15 is when you can't go to the temple.
Right. It's almost like Aaron's 2 sons were like the big example of what happens to you if you're the wrong type of situation to go to the temple. And then, so now we've got like the big warning that what could happen to you if you get it wrong. Then here's some rules about making sure you don't get it wrong.
And again, the whole idea of waiting, having that time out, makes the time in important.
Why then is it so important to not go to the temple when you're tamei that you could get killed for it? Like why is it? I mean, I get like, yes, it's important to take time out, for the mother that has had a child, or for somebody that's got I don't know, let's say a bad skin disease, they have to take time out, or some other sickness, they have to take time out. But why is it like almost like it's on pain of
Why is it like chametz on Pesach?
Yeah, like,
okay, you're chayv karet. Why such a minuscule thing? It's a small little thing. Why such a harsh punishment?
Exactly. Like at the end of the Parasha, it goes, where is it? It says like that you get the death penalty for this kind of things.
If you're tamei and enter the temple, you're chayv karet. It says that many times in Sefer.
Yeah.
We have it in Paradum as well.
Yeah, like chapter 15, verse 31. V'zaytim b'nei Yisrael mitumatam, v'lo yamutu b'tumatam b'tamam mishkani asher b'tocham. They should not warn them about their Tuma, that they should not die from their Tuma if they come to the
temple has to be respected. There's always a big argument. Do you let kids run around in shul?
Right.
So we always, I plead guilty because it's important for kids to want to come to shul and like shul. On the other hand, when shul becomes a playground, it loses respect for the temple. Right. You need a temple when people come.
A good shul has a playground
outside nearby and thing. Yeah. So you need to build an atmosphere of respect. Wow, I'm coming to a place. So take the laws of one day Tuma we had in chapter 11.
Right.
So if I'm visiting the temple
Mm-hmm.
and I want to go visit the temple, again, renew my relationship with God, the whole day beforehand, I have to be careful not to touch this, not to touch that. There's a lot of things that cause one day Tuma.
Right.
Okay? And simply you have to wait till sunset and go to the mikveh, whatever it is. It's one day Tuma. Then this week we have 7 day Tuma, longer for more. But the fact that I need to be careful the whole day before I come to the temple, that creates sort of anticipation.
Right.
I remember like before your bar mitzvah, you can't play tackle football. You can't. Don't go. Don't go skiing
Right.
the week before your wedding, kind of thing.
Yeah. Don't have a broken leg or a broken eye.
Now a lot of people say, "Oh, I'll be fine."
Yeah.
Therefore, there says chayiv karet. You follow? Everyone thinks they can. No, I'll be fine. But I think all these laws, all this stringency, creates a atmosphere that makes the temple more respectful. And builds respect for the temple. And therefore, when people just trample the temple, like when shul becomes a kiddush club hangout, try to be mean, and then people don't respect the shul because it's just people sit and talk. That's not healthy, especially when you want your employers to become and be inspired and leave the temple with a renewed understanding of what the relationship with God is about.
Okay. So it's got to be serious. It's got to have a serious death penalty for people to take the temple seriously.
Yeah. In other religions, they take it way more. They're much more into it than we are.
Right.
If I remember correctly,
right.
They, we sort of want to feel at home in shul, which is nice. But sometimes there's a need to build respect for a shul, especially for a temple.
All right. Thank you. So there's a lot of terms that are to do with the tzarua.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't understand a word.
Yeah, you don't understand those either?
I was saying, I'm assuming that back then it was understandable. But there's certain things that we're not in touch with that anymore. I'm assuming back at the time, what makes it meaningful for all? Listen, when you look carefully, I have a bigger question. It's not what all these words mean and what they mean to us, but rather, why is Chumash sharing with us a law code which only needs to be studied by the priests? There's most of the laws of Chumash are Debra B'nai Israel. Here, there's a whole set of laws. The God said, Moshe, tell your brother Aaron and the Kohanim, here's what you do.
Yeah.
Only the Kohanim to know this. There's sort of God's making me read this medical manual that only my doctor really understands. So if I look at a medical book, I don't understand a word. I'm hoping my doctor does. But when I see my doctor's medical book, I really appreciate my doctor.
Right.
So it might build the fact that maybe these laws create respect for the institute of the priesthood. Maybe I'm just throwing out an idea, but again, I don't understand a word.
Right.
It's challenging for Balkore, and it's good for correcting the Balkore.
Interesting. So we need to learn, read through the medical book and be impressed by all the stuff we don't understand, so that we appreciate the people that do understand.
And maybe that's one way to look at it. Again, I have no idea if that's right, but that's my understanding.
Right.
But I don't think nowadays we can understand. Again, if that was your job and you did that, again, you're familiar with it, like in any profession.
So you don't really buy into the idea that we need to know all this stuff because it's all about Lashon Hara and the thing that.
No, that's fine. I don't need this to tell you not to speak Lashon Hara.
Okay.
No shame to you is enough of that. I don't need Parshat Tzara to teach me. Now, in general, if I know things like that might happen to you for sinning, that might stop you from sinning. But ideally, you shouldn't do it because it's not the right thing to do.
Right. So you're saying we could have gotten the whole Lashon Hara thing from somewhere else.
Yeah, in fact, that's what the rabbis say. We got it from one line of Sefer Devarim. Remember what happened to Miriam? I always like to ask the question: why does God tell us Lashon Hara about Miriam? No, but Chumash tells us what happened to Miriam, so that we don't speak Lashon Hara, because even though she meant well, read the Ramban in Devarim, was it chapter 24, I think, verse 8, 9. Remember what God did to Miriam. Remember, even though she meant well, she still got punished. Kal v'chomer, and we don't mean well, and we do it in public, and we do it, for the wrong reason. So it's through that story I can learn how I need to be careful.
Right.
My goal is not to know how bad she was, but to know how good I need to be.
All right. So we have one last type of Tuma that comes up in our double Parasha, which is actually super relevant for people today, seemingly, seems to me, which is the idea of Nidda. We have the Zav, the Polet Shechvat Zera, the two examples of the bodily emissions for men and two examples for women, the Nidda and the Zava. So what is the meaning of all these things for you? You know, I'm a little bit suspicious of, you know, some of the meanings that people attach to the idea of Nidda and
It's part of life. It's part of life and giving birth to children and things like that. If I take my model of you come to the temple when you're as an employee,
right?
You know, I'm taking off of work today because I don't feel well or I have a headache, or without getting into, you know, details. So if in a life cycle there's times of the month that you don't feel well, so God gives you a timeout. That's fine. Now, Zav and Zabah seem to be more like medical things, like emissions are not normal.
Right.
Now, we have a law that we consider like everyone like a Zabah. That's too complicated. That's not for a Parsha podcast.
Okay.
Ask your local rabbi.
It's
How the rabbis, that's a halachic discussion that, you know, tons and tons of material on, which is not our topic at all. But in general, we recognize the regular routine of Nidda. So there's 7 days that you're time out from the temple. And then if you're where your body emissions are like not natural, that's Zav and Zabah already, then you need more time out and you need a whole process of cleansing. Very similar to Tzarat, you know, as far as the framework.
Interesting.
And
So
the Yichatata. Yeah. There's something not natural in your body emissions.
right.
How it works, I have no idea.
That's for Zav and Zabah. But for Nidda, it is natural.
Yeah, but it's very limited in Chumash. Just, you know, a week of time out from visiting God.
Right. And there's no mention in this week's Parasha of a prohibition of husband and wife.
Yeah, that's going to be in Achrimot, in chapter 18.
So why is that divided up?
That's a different law. That's a law for outside the temple. Remember, from chapter 18, well, we can get there yet. In chapter 18, we leave the temple, our behavior outside the temple.
Right.
Up until Yom Kippur, up until chapter 17, we're dealing with the temple. The first half of Sefer Vayikra, the first 17 chapters, deal with the temple. But when you come, what you bring when you come, and what you bring, and then who can come, and what you need to do so you can come again. But everything has to do with the Mishkan, and the highlight's going to be, you know, Yom Kippur.
See.
And then we leave the temple in chapter 18 and deal with day-to-day life outside temple, Kedoshim Tiyu, etc. But it's a topic for another week.
I see. So you're saying it has to divide up these laws because they're actually fundamentally different. The idea that a Nidda doesn't go to the Beit HaMikdash or the Mishkan versus that she's not together with her husband.
That's the two different laws.
Right. Even though they're both laws of Nidda.
Unless she has a husband who thinks he's God.
Nice. Okay. Very good. Okay. Shkoyach.
Okay. So it's Rosh Chodesh this week also.
Yes.
So one day we have to talk about Rosh Chodesh, but Chodesh type of renewal, and we pray to God that we're also judged that every Rosh Chodesh is like a mini, called a mini-Yom Kippur in Rosh Hashanah. Like once a year we have this mass, you know, standing in front of God, renewing your relationship, you know, that once a year thing. And I like to say we get a monthly quiz for final grade. We get our big final once a year on Rosh Hashanah Yom Kippur. And once a month we get a little quiz. So remember Rosh Chodesh is time of Zikaron, and also time of Kapara. Talk about in our prayers. So hopefully, this month especially, Rosh Chodesh coming up is time for prayer and reestablishing our relationship with God. But we're going to ask God. Remember in Yalav Yovel, we're going to pray to God that when He judges us, because we're being judged all the time by God, that once a month, you know, when there's a renewal of the moon and the natural systems of the sky, etc. That's a time of renewal. Remember your relationship with God, just like the beginning of the year, also at the beginning of the month. And we pray to God that take into consideration all the things we've done, the memory of our deeds, of our parents, of our grandparents, of everything we've dedicated to you, the city we set aside for you, Jerusalem, the people set aside for you, and give us a good judgment. Remember, judge us for good, Zakhrinu, the Tovah, and remember us for good. And the last line is always in use rachamim. You may not deserve a good judgment, but use your attributes of mercy. Because you're a great God, and we're dedicated employees, even though we mess up all the time. So give us a break. That's pretty much Yalef Yava in a nutshell.
Very nice.
And God should answer our prayers.
Amen. Thank you so much. Thank you to all those who've joined us. And thank you to everybody who's a part of the podcast. And wishing everyone a Shabbat Shalom and a Chodesh Tov.
And Besorot Tovot.